from the Institute for the Advancement of Cognitive Education. These are powerful podcasts, conversations with scholars, authors, and professionals, cutting-edge resources, helping you to enhance better thinking and learning.
Good day. Our guest today is Dr. Cas Olivier. He's a specialist on the thinking brain, and in his work he demonstrates how 28 inborn thinking tools are integrated and holistically employed in thinking processes. This approach of Dr. Olivier provides thinking roadmaps to gear learners towards developmental mindsets, and this thinking tools program is also registered with the South African Council for Educators. Dr. Olivier provides national and international online thinking tools sessions to teachers, parents, and learners, as well as businesses and entrepreneurs. Dr. Olivier is the author of 2 books, The DNA of Great Teachers, and a co-author of Critical Thinking, a multi-dimensional approach in the context of South Africa. Dr. Olivier, you are so welcome.
I thank you, Olivier.
So our first question is, what is the relationship between classroom communication and critical thinking?
Olivier, you see, we are all born with thinking tools. I did not create any thinking tool myself. For example, if you take a 1-year-old boy, the girl, and you give them a bucket of toys, what will they do? They will start picking it out. They will take apart anything that you provide to them. And that is the germ of analysis. So we are all born with the ability to analyze. The same with other thinking tools like surface and deep thinking. When we read the heading of a newspaper article, we are in a surface thinking mode and we gather information over there. Then we swap to deep thinking when we read the article. So surface and deep thinking are not strange to the mind. So all that we need to do is to engage our learners into surface thinking by asking them or telling them to explore, say, for example, a paragraph and look for superficial information. And next instruction would then be to engage them in deep thinking, where they can source more information, more detail, more facts. The same with analysis and synthesis. We are all the way busy analyzing and synthesizing without being aware of them. Critical thinking, coming closer to how we think and how we engage in thinking, is an individual and personalized engagement. It's not a group thing. The moment that you address a class as a group, you create an atmosphere for learners to be troublesome. Such disruptive learners flourish in a group, and it creates a negative impact on classroom management. Now, over and above the negative effect on classroom discipline, addressing the classroom is also then not conducive to critical thinking.
And I think this is so relevant, especially in today's context in the education system, where teachers have to work with very large classes, and I think the notion of class discipline is really a challenge that many teachers face. Dr. Olivier, so if you state, according to thinking tools, that addressing a class is not conducive to critical thinking, how on earth do you suggest that teachers then communicate to learners?
The thinking tool paradigm is based on communication as it happens in real life. The rule is that one can only communicate with one person at the time. A mother can either communicate with her husband or with the child, not with both. This means that teachers should refrain from presenting and explaining their PowerPoint slides and talking to the class, because at this point in time we know that the brain does not work in linear lines. It works in hyperlink ways, and once we start explaining, we really defeat good critical thinking and we support linear spoon feeding. Teacher-centered teachers, when I'm talking about teacher-centered teachers, I'm talking about traditional teachers. They hold the position that should they dare to talk to one learner at a time, that the others are excluded from the discussion and they will not pay attention and will become disruptive. For them, the one-to-one teacher-learner ratio communication is totally taboo. When they were trained to do the wrong things right. Teaching one learner at a time falls in those teacher-centered teachers' blind spot. To grasp the thinking tools teaching paradigm, one needs to shift your mind from the ratio, namely say from 1 to 30, and focus on the phenomenon of a dialogue.
What you say is really revolutionary because the whole education system is based on the fact that a teacher stands in front of a classroom of 30 or 40, I heard the other day, sometimes in severe cases 60 students, and address them as a group. And your point of departure is that is exactly where the problem is, where a teacher addresses a group instead of one individual at a time. So can you explain then practically how is it possible to communicate with one learner at a time in a classroom with more than 30 or 40 students?
Good. Thank you, VP. One should not get stuck to the ratio, on the ratio problem. One should look at the communication phenomenon. And in this case, you do not have to cross the world to find evidence that when two people are communicating, others get intrigued in their dialogue. The whole multi-million-dollar movie industry is based on the dialogue phenomenon. Meaning that when we watch a movie, we personalize all the information that's going on the screen and take account that only two people at a time are talking in a dialogue between them on a screen. And we are then starting to eavesdrop what is happening over there. So once you look at a movie and you walk out, you are able to tell the whole story to a friend once you are asked to do so. So since the production of the first sound movie 90 years ago, the education system did not detect that the solution lies in the dialogue and that bystanders of any discussion are eavesdropping and listening and are becoming involved, taking part, having their own views. So moving from the ratio from 1 to 30 to the way that communication takes place puts you in a total new communication paradigm.
So I think the burning question then is, how is it possible to communicate with one learner at a time in a class of, say, 30 learners?
Yet they're shifting the mind from the ratio to the dialogue phenomenon, as employed by the movie industry, open a whole new world for effective classroom communication. In a dialogue between the teacher and the specific learner, the rest of the learners automatically get involved and intrigued. They follow the different points of the dialogue and may even silently take side of either the teacher or the learner involved in the communication. But this paves the way for the thinking tools questioning paradigm, which enable each learner to construct their individual storyboard that differs from those of the rest of the group.
Okay, Dr. Olivier, thank you very much. It makes a lot of sense, and as I indicated earlier, this is really revolutionary. But I want to ask you, in the beginning you said that one of the challenges is that learners' minds might wander. So if you start to apply this in the classroom, could a teacher then get a specific learner's mind who might wander back to focus again on the topic and the discussion?
Let's first acknowledge the fact that the learner's mind may wander. That's a natural phenomenon. So you should not scream or reprimand such a learner because the learner is just acting natural. So once you detect, and we as teachers know when a learner's mind is wandering, you then start talking to that learner by starting with the learner's name. Now, in the teaching tool phenomenon or paradigm, you always address a specific learner on the learner's name.
Why would that be important?
You see, traditional teachers, when they're talking to a class, they are effectively talking to the learner's ears and eyes. They normally say, listen to this, class, look at this. This means that they are talking to the learner's ears and eyes and not to their brains. The moment I call a learner on his or her name, I'm talking to the owner of that learner's brain, and that is the learner. So if I say Johnny, I'm talking to the owner of Johnny's brain. Therefore, I have direct access to that learner. Good. Knowing that Johnny's mind wandered, I call Johnny on his name. I don't want to expose him. So what do? I rewind a question or two. Only me and Johnny would know that his mind wandered. The rest of the class would not know. So what I will do is I will call his name. I will rewind one or two questions. Only me and him will know that I rewinded. And I'm building a lot of respect. And that is how I get my learners who's wandering minds back by means of calling their names and asking them questions.
So I think those are very practical suggestions on how to engage an individual student. But let's say, and this oftentimes happens in classroom, that two pupils or two students are having a conversation on their own that is clearly not related to the class discussion and the topic being discussed. What would you suggest that teacher can do?
As we know, teachers are excellent in detecting those. So what do? You keep on talking to the learner that you are talking with. You engage yourself in a questioning mode and you say the following. You say, dear peer, I'm going to ask you a very, very interesting question. I want you to listen very carefully. Mary will start answering it, and so she will pick up where you cannot, and she will fill you in. Meaning that I immediately rope them in. They know that I know that they did not attend and they were discussing their own things, but immediately I rope them in. My philosophy behind that is I want authority in class. My philosophy is if you want something, give it away. So I give my authority away. Totally, I leave them. Then by engaging them with questions that I address to the previous learner, they are now on board and they know that they cannot hide in the group.
So to make this practically clear for our listeners, in the thinking tools paradigm, what I see in my mind's eye is that a teacher is standing in front of the class, engaging one other student in a discussion about a specific topic. And if, for instance, two other students go on their own way to have a discussion that's disconnected with that, then one would engage them or keep on engaging the student that the teacher is engaging, but using those other students by pulling their names into the conversation and suggesting that they will give the answer one after the other. Am I understanding you correctly?
100% correct. And keep in mind, the moment you call their names, you're talking to their brains. And they then start attending. But if you scream to them to attend, you're talking to their ears, they will not eventually get involved.
What really stands out for me at this stage of our conversation is that this is an extremely helpful paradigm to personalize information, and that is so important in the learning process.
Very much so. You see, all information provided in textbooks are mass-oriented materials. They are written for all. The moment the learners start to engage with the learning material, they make it personal for themselves. Once you make anything personal for yourself, it's kind of cemented in your long-term memory, which has another context within the thinking tool paradigm. We don't see the memory as a space. We see memory as a process. So memory never stops. You start with the theme and you develop it as you go. It's never ending. It's a lifelong learning thing.
So one of the keys that we spoke about to personalize the learning process for each individual is to use his or her name. Are there other benefits when the teacher is addressing one learner at a time?
Yes, VP, there are other benefits. Calling a learner or learners on their names means that the teacher respects them and then can expect the same in return. In general, teachers are not satisfied with the level of respect they receive from learners. The question that now arises is, can a teacher who addresses the learners as you and class expect respect from learners if they don't demonstrate their respect by calling their learners on their names? You see, the learners normally address the teacher on their name, saying teacher or teacher Carol or teacher whoever, addressing and acknowledging the teacher, but the teacher just talking about them. So the teacher should then recognize them as individuals. And the teacher is then also silently signaling that no one can hide in a crowd, because you're talking to learners, you're talking to names, you're talking to brains.
And this notion of respect, I couldn't help thinking of what Ron Richard at the Harvard Graduate School of Education is writing about in his theory on 8 cultural forces. He underlines also in one of those 8 cultural forces the importance of interactions and relationships, and the importance that respect plays to invite learners to make a value contribution and to foster collaborative inquiry. So I think what you argue finds very strong resonance with what Ron Richards also promotes in Project Zero at the Harvard Graduate School of Education.
True.
So in conclusion, Dr. Olivier, how does classroom communication, the thinking tools way, assist in enhancing critical thinking?
As we said, critical thinking is a personal thing. Critical thinking cannot happen in a group. So we want learners to demonstrate critical thinker. So you are addressing a specific learner, requesting the learner to analyze a specific paragraph. For example, you may ask a learner to analyze a paragraph with the Bono's white hat. This means the learner will then directly be involved in critical thinking, looking and listing facts. Now, as the learner is listing the facts that he or she is detected in the text, the other learners are eavesdropping and conducting or checking the learner's specific analysis, and they are then engaged in their own thinking. So you start creating, by means of effective classroom communication, a culture of critical thinking in the class without instructing the learners to critically think, which takes me to a new point. You cannot teach critical thinking. It can only be learned. Another way may be to ask a learner to synthesize facts employing the Bono's blue thinking hat. The learner will then start compiling a list or steps or whatever whilst the other learners are eavesdropping and again conducting their own specific synthesis, checking it with the learners who are speaking, etc. So in this way, we create an atmosphere of critical thinking by means of communicating the thinking tools way in classes.
I think this is fascinating. In our conversation just before we started the recording, we also reflected a bit on the neuron system in the brain that, when there's accurate observation and students observe carefully what is happening, in this case, conversations between the teacher and the learner, then it is as if they are personally also going through the exercise. So it makes perfect sense also from a neurological perspective, what you are putting forward.
100%. And in conclusion from my side, none of the thinking tools that I have established, I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of giants, that is true, but none of the thinking tools is a formula created by human beings. If you look at analysis and synthesis, we all do it all the time. We just need to be aware of analysis and synthesis. The same with the bonus hats, the same with surface and deep thinking. They are all inborn. They're just by means of thinking tools, communication, being made aware of the tools and start employing the tools for their benefit.
Thank you so much for the conversation. This is, of course, also an exciting time for you. You recently published a new book. Would you like to say something about the book and where the listeners can get hold of the book?
Yeah, thank you, Olivier. I wrote a book. The title of the book is Potential Development Using Thinking Tools, with the subtitle, A Key to Flipped Teaching. Flipped teaching is not the same as the flipped classroom. Flipped teaching is really if you engage a learner in the bonus white hat, exploring a paragraph, the learner will teach you what is inside the paragraph. The book is being published by Cambridge Scholar Publishers, and it is released the 1st of November 2019, and everything being written on the book is based on my experiences in thinking tool sessions with teachers. So I want to acknowledge all the teachers from whom I gained a lot of information during my 3-4 years of thinking tool development.
Fantastic. And we will also on the ERC website put a link to the book where listeners can order the book. Dr. Olivier, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your thorough preparation. Thank you for your generous sharing of years and years of experience and expertise. Where can our listeners get hold of you if they want to make contact and find out a bit more about thinking tools?
Good. Let me give my cell phone number, 083 25 92 857, and they can also drop me an email at Cas, it is short for Casper, Cas at learningdesigns.co.za.
So, of course, for our international listeners, the dialing code to come into South Africa for a telephone call is +27 and then omit the 0 and continue with 83259287. That was Dr. Cas Olivier speaking about the thinking tools paradigm today as a way to personalize the learning process.
This podcast is produced by the Institute for the Advancement of Cognitive Education. Find us online at www.ilearnthinking.org or on social media at iLearnThinking.